There is a question almost no one asks out loud in church, but nearly everyone has asked in the dark. Where was God when I lost everything? Perhaps the oldest book in the Bible is not about a king, or a miracle, or a promised land. It is about a man sitting in ashes who lost it all in a single day and then heard nothing from heaven for a very long time. If you are walking through loss right now, if you have prayed and the ceiling felt like brass, this story was preserved across thousands of years for you. This is the story of Job, the man who lost everything while God said nothing. In the land of Uz, there lived a man named Job, and Scripture opens with words God himself will later repeat. Blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. He had 7 sons, 3 daughters, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and a household so great that he was called the greatest man of all the people of the East. And Job was not rich and careless, he was rich and careful. Early in the morning, he would rise and offer sacrifices for each of his children. Just in case, he said, they had sinned in their hearts. He prayed for his family before anything had even gone wrong. But far above that quiet, faithful life, a scene was unfolding that Job would never see. The accuser came before the Lord, and when God pointed to Job, "Have you considered my servant Job?" the accuser sneered back a question that echoes into every generation. Does Job fear God for nothing? Take the blessings away, he said, and he will curse you to your face. And God allowed the test, but set its boundary. Hear what was really at stake. The question was never whether Job was strong. The question was whether anyone loves God for God alone. Then came the day. A messenger ran to Job. The oxen were plowing, and raiders took them all. The servants are dead. While he was yet speaking, another arrived. Fire fell from the sky. The sheep are gone. While he was yet speaking, a third. The camels are stolen. And while that man was still speaking, the last messenger came through the door. Your children were feasting together, and a great wind struck the 4 corners of the house, all 10. In one day, the greatest man of the East became the emptiest. And what did Job do? Scripture says he stood up, tore his robe, shaved his head, and fell to the ground, and worshipped. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Then his own body was struck, painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. He sat down in the ashes, scraping his skin with a piece of broken pottery. His wife, drowning in her own grief, said, "Do you still hold on to your integrity? Curse God and die." And Job answered her, "Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil?" In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. 3 friends came to comfort him, and for 7 days and 7 nights they simply sat with him on the ground and said nothing at all. It was the best thing they ever did for him. Then they opened their mouths and made everything worse. Surely, they insisted, God is just. So if you are suffering like this, you must have sinned. Confess it. Their theology was tidy. It was confident. And God would later say, it was wrong. Job refused to lie about himself just to make the universe feel orderly. And he refused to let go of God. Out of his anguish came some of the rawest prayers in the Bible. He cursed the day of his birth. He demanded answers. He said things polite religion would never allow, and he said them to God's face, because even his complaint was a form of faith. You do not argue all night with someone you've stopped believing in. And in the middle of the storm, 2 sentences rose out of him like light through a crack in the door. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I shall see God. But heaven stayed silent. Chapter after chapter. No voice, no vision, no explanation. If you are in that silence right now, hear this. The silence of God is not the absence of God. All through those speeches, the Lord was there, listening, treasuring every word, and already preparing his answer. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. But notice what God did not do. He did not explain. He never mentioned the accuser. He never told Job why. Instead, he asked questions, question after question, some 70 of them by one count. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Who shut in the sea with doors when it burst from the womb? Have you commanded the morning or shown the dawn its place? Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loose the cords of Orion? Question after question, God walked Job through the storehouses of the snow, the path of the lightning, the wings of the hawk, the strength of creatures no man can tame. And somehow it was enough. Job put his hand over his mouth, and then he said something remarkable. I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Job asked for an explanation. God gave him an encounter, and the encounter did what no explanation could. Because if God is great enough to be blamed for what you cannot understand, he is great enough to be trusted with it. Job never learned about the scene in heaven. He went to his grave without the answer to why. But he no longer needed it, because he had seen who. Then God turned to the three friends and defended the man in the ashes. You have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. The honest struggler was closer to the truth than the confident accusers. Let that reorder everything you fear about your own hard questions. And Scripture marks the exact moment everything turned. The Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he prayed for his friends, not when they apologized, when he prayed for the very men who had wounded him. The Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before, 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 7 sons and 3 daughters. And in all the land no women were found so beautiful as Job's daughters, and their father gave them an inheritance alongside their brothers. He lived 140 more years and saw his children's children, 4 generations. And James, writing centuries later, gives the whole story its epitaph. You have heard of the endurance of Job, and you have seen the purpose of the Lord, that the Lord is compassionate and merciful. So what does this mean for you tonight? It means that every time someone keeps trusting God with empty hands, the accuser's question gets its answer. Worship was never a transaction. It means your rawest, most honest prayer is more precious to God than someone else's tidy theology. And it means the silence you are standing in right now is not the end of your story. It is the middle. The Lord you cannot hear has not left the room, and the God who met Job in the whirlwind is compassionate and merciful. He will meet you too. The Lord gave, the Lord has taken away, and the Lord restores. If you made it this far, type, "But now my eye sees you," in the comments. Someone in the silence needs those words tonight. Good night, and may the God of Job hold everything you've lost and everything you have left.